Thank you so much for tuning in to Bite Talks. My name is Nicola Kemp and I'm editorial director of Creativebrief. The England women's team were busy writing a sensational new chapter for women's sport this weekend, with record viewing levels and an unprecedented win that will undoubtedly help to change the game for the next generation of Chloe Kellys and Lauren Jameses. On and off the pitch, women's football is the ultimate challenger brand. Having experienced unprecedented growth in recent years, marked by increased fan engagement, rising attendance and matches, and a surge in participation at all levels. Last year marked another milestone for women's football, with the creation of the Women's Professional League Limited, a new corporate entity which took charge of the Women's Super League and the Women's Championship from the Football Association. The organisation, which recently rebranded as the Women's Super League as a whole, is leading a new era of women's football. And Ruth Hooper is the marketing leader on the forefront of writing this new chapter as Chief Marketing Officer at the Women's Super League. The organisation, which appointed Anomaly this year and launched a distinctive new brand, has big ambitions to sit alongside the biggest sporting brands in the world and do things differently. Thank you so much, Ruth, for joining us today to lift the lid on this exciting new era of women's football and the marketing lessons we can all take from it.
Thank you
Firstly,
for that intro.
firstly, we just have to start with the Lionesses. I may spontaneously combust with excitement just thinking about this game. I mean, what is the long-term legacy? It's such a magic moment. Tell us what you think.
Oh, it is magical. And yeah, I've got my wall planner here from the Euros, which I need to fill in because I only got back from Switzerland late last night, so I've yet to put the final score in. But yeah, I mean, it is a magical moment. I think the whole nation is on high since Sunday evening. And there's just so much that just so much can come from this. And we talk about legacy, we talk about inspiring a generation. We saw an awful lot of that happen off the back of the win in 2022, and now I think we're in an even stronger position to really capitalise on that. And of course, we've got potentially a home World Cup as well in 2035 to kind of work towards. And I think you know, as an organisation, as WSL Football, our job is to raise the game and grow the game. And we want these new fans, these new that are tuning in to the Lionesses, to then come to a game and support their new favourite players week in, week out. And I hope we'll start to see more people in our stadiums. That's a vision for me. Stadiums full, inspiring. And there was wonderful players, and them coming to see them play. And as we kind of continue to increase investment into the sport, increase visibility of women's football in the media. And then, of course, from a participation point of view, the government made an announcement this morning that they're going to double the number of grassroots slots available to women and girls to play. They've launched a new women's sport task force. So those girls that have been inspired by Michelle Aguiman over the last number of weeks, that maybe are 10 now, they could be her at the World Cup in 10 years' time. And wouldn't that be wonderful to see? And for us, if we can bringing in that investment into the game to help kind of further develop those talent pathways, then there's no reason why those young girls can't be doing that on the pitch in 10 years' time.
What an incredible legacy. My train this morning was full of mums and daughters and sons, actually, all on their way to the parade. It's like a real sort of moment of national pride. And it's also a moment of change as well, as you mentioned, in terms of the focus on grassroots. For the Women's Super League, how important was it to really embrace a challenger mindset to really harness the potential of this new era of women's football?
Are so important. We've been a company now nearly a year. August 15th will be our first birthday. So we are a startup. We're a startup, yes, with years of legacy behind us. We're a startup with huge ambition. And if you look at the dictionary definition of a challenger brand, it talks about challenger brands offering something new or different and seeking to innovate or create change in that existing market. And in that market of sport and of football, things have been done a certain way for many, many years. And we've got this opportunity to come with that challenger brand energy and do something different. because this is a different brand of football to the men's game. Um, and you will have seen, many people will have seen over the last 4 weeks, just actually the game is played very differently. And it sounds super simple, but the female body moves differently to the male body, so therefore the biometrics of the game of gameplay are entirely different. So you do see different pace, you see different strength and tactics playing out in different ways. It's a different audience. I see that from who's in the stands to the men's game, and therefore it's a different fan experience. So you kind of think of it through that lens of being a challenger brand. We're actually sitting on a product, quote unquote, which is entirely different to the products that exist in our current marketplace. So we need to make sure that we're packaging it in that way and that we're bringing kind of fresh, new excitement and bringing distinction through how we present our brand.
That's so interesting as well in terms of that unique energy and taking that unique energy and really building momentum. And with that in mind, what does being distinctive as a brand mean to you? And what do you think is the opportunity? And you touched on this to really for the women's game to not see the men's game as the automatic template.
Yeah, I think, well, I suppose I've just touched on it a little bit in a previous answer in that it is a different brand of football. Um, and I think we've seen in the past that we have presented it in a very similar way to the men's game. I can think of visuals, but sort of my shock that I show in a presentation, a visual of a men's campaign next to a women's campaign, and all the players are staring down at the camera with their arms folded, and it's a very similar colour of blue in the background. Um, and so I think there are so many unique and wonderful qualities that make the women's game special and makes it appeal to a different audience. Our audiences are very different. You will see um, our clubs will tell us that anywhere between 5 and 20% is the crossover between their men's fan base and their women's fan base, depending on the size of club. And we can see from the audience data that we have available to us that there is a huge percentage of fans who have come to women's football without actually being a fan of football previously. So we're seeing this kind of since the win in 2022, I think over 50% of fans are new to football. And so, yeah, they're finding something in the women's game that didn't appeal to them in the men's game. So we've got this huge opportunity to bring that distinction to life, and make sure that more of these new fans can see that actually you can watch the Barclays Women's Super League or Barclays Women's Super League 2 week in, week out and have that same feeling and that same connection to those players that you have done when you've been watching the Euros.
I love that too because it's the storytelling aspect, isn't it? After the game, one of my friends texted me saying, "Oh, I've booked 5 tickets at Stamford Bridge to watch Chelsea women like come to
Amazing.
these games." And I was like, I just love the immediacy of like, I don't want to stop this. I now need to follow these players. And
Amazing.
there is such positive momentum there, but there's also, when you do build a distinctive brand, when you are, front page of every single newspaper, which is just so important to see that media shift, you do expose yourself to backlash, right? Because it's new, it's different, and it's everywhere. And how do you prepare for that pushback as a leader?
Yeah, I think I've learned a few things around this in our first year. I think when it comes to developing of the brand, and as you alluded to in your intro, we have rebranded. We've renamed the leagues and we've and the company and brought a new visual identity to the world. And I think, as we went through that process, it was about starting with what is it that makes the women's game unique and wonderful and appeals to our core fans as much as it does to the new fans coming into the game. And then how do we find that secret sauce and supercharge it? And we went throughout the process, which we took a long time doing. We consulted with players, we consulted with fans to really understand from them what it was that made it unique and how we kind of took that forward. Um, and I think the other thing is that we need to make sure that we are being very clear in our communications on the reasons for the change, the why, and how actually it's going to benefit the community around women's football, be that the players, the clubs, or the fans. And I think kind of if I the reveal of the new brand names and the visual brand, we learned quite a bit in that moment. I think broadly, when you look at our sentiment tracker, it was broadly neutral and positive. It was great. But of course, you get that small 10% who are really giving you kind of the hard truths of that, how they feel. I think what I learned in that moment is that we needed to be clearer on a lot of the things that we are doing and also why a rebrand is important.
Mm.
So we are this audience that I'm talking to now. I'm talking to you. We're marketeers. We understand like the foundations of an organization, a company, is the brand and the strength that you are associated with that brand and therefore the value it can bring. So we knew that that was one of the first things we needed to do out of the gate. And the reason why we sort of aligned into WSL or Women's Super League as our company name and also as our league names and rebranding the championship to Barclays WSL 2 was because we need to make sure that we are driving visibility. So we need discoverability to be easy. And WSL is the brand out of the three that we had previously that has the most equity. In fact, it has kind of in strength in line with the men's FA Cup. So we were like, we've got something here. We just really need to simplify and get after WSL. But it's also a way of us driving value in the WSL too. So as it currently stands, we know from our commercial conversations that it's had very little value associated with it, but it's a phenomenal product. So actually creating kind of one brand, two leagues allows us to kind of rise but the value of both of those products that we have. So I think we probably needed to do a better job of understanding that. And then that we need that to do that, to drive the value, to drive the investment, to make sure we can fix all the challenges that we've got in terms of raising the game. And maybe we didn't do a great job of doing that, but I think we've got plenty of opportunity to kind of continue to reiterate that story of the why.
And that's really interesting as well, thinking about that brand architecture and how that will play out in the long term in terms of the commercial returns, arguably might be the answer to some of those kind of questions. And digging more into that, when you highlighted Anomaly's understanding of the purpose, principle, and position within the sport landscape as a key reason for their appointment. And it's really interesting that point in the midst of perhaps a wider marketing industry narrative where commentators have called peak purpose. In fact, they've been calling peak purpose for quite a while. So what's your view on that? Does purpose still matter in women's sport?
I think it depends on your definition of purpose. So, my definition of purpose and our organisation's definition of purpose is our North Star that guides us. So, it's making sure that the our business has a sense of being that is bigger than the sport itself. So, our purpose is to leverage the power of women's football to drive a more equitable society. But our vision is women's football transformed, and our mission is to build the most distinctive, competitive, and entertaining women's football competition on the planet for the fans and the players of today and tomorrow. So when I made that point about Anomaly, I wasn't referring to they are going to drive communications which are all about equity.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, sometimes like in the marketing definition of purpose, we actually go to communications. Actually, it's bigger than that. It's about an organization having a bigger purpose in the world. So when I said that about Anomaly, my sense was not that, it was actually more that they get us. They get us, they get our organization, they get the brand that we want to create, they understand the landscape in which we operate within. Um, and I just felt like they could help us achieve our mission. They demonstrated through the pitch process that they understood our mission and that they were motivated uh, to be able to get after it and help us make change within the market.
I love that nuance as well, because so often when we talk about purpose in the marketing industry, it is really black and white. So, like, if you have a purpose as a brand, you couldn't perhaps lean into humor, or you couldn't, you know, show female footballers in a really kind of different way. You have to kind of have almost like the stereotype of purpose. So, it's so interesting to hear that actually, you can have the North Star, but actually, you can also have like a bit of creative freedom as well as that.
Yeah, I feel like purpose-led marketing is great in the right places, but women's sport is not in the business of purpose-led marketing. We're in the business of showing how our products are about competition, they're about entertainment, and I talk on behalf of my peers also here in the world of rugby or in tennis who've done an amazing job. This is elite sport. We've got the very best athletes playing our sport, and that's phenomenal. And that's what we need to demonstrate. And if we can have an impact on society along the way, then fantastic. That's what we would all aspire to do. But we're not going to go just down the route of purpose-led communications.
It's really interesting. And with that in mind, where do you think we are in the evolution of women's football? And what does success look like to you?
Um, I think we're at the start of a next chapter. Um, uh, it's actually in sport you kind of have these bookends with tournaments that can help you give this next chapter. But I think what's happened over the last few years, 2022. The Lionesses won the Euros. That then started the process for taking the professional game out of the FA into this standalone independent entity, which we managed to do a year ago. We've gone through our first season. The Euros have happened, and the Lionesses have won it again. So we really are at kind of this next phase with a viewpoint out 10 years, with this Home World Cup in 2035. So for me, I think success over the next few years is about driving a highly visible, culturally relevant brand of women's football. I want to see full stadiums. I want all of our players to be recognised and to get the recognition that they deserve. I want the women's game to be talked about within popular culture, and I think we are on the way to doing that. There's certainly shifts that are happening, but there's more work to be done, and I'm super excited by what the future holds.
And that momentum is so vital, but there's still also that wonderful maxim, which I know is a cliche, but it's so true. If you can't see it, you can't be it. And how important do you think the legacy is of this? Because you've touched on it in that kind of journey to the World Cup, that the importance of these this two now Euros success stories. Like, how important are those moments?
They're really important because they galvanise action. So I mentioned this government report's been that's been launched this morning. No, and it talks in there about, of course, it talks about the grassroots and it talks about what they're going to do to improve and enable girls to play. But it also talks about visibility and visibility of women's sport in the media. And I being a marketeer, I zeroed in on that. And I think you get these moments in time which galvanize change within wider society to actually help grow. Um, and so I think visibility is going to be incredibly, and continues to be actually, incredibly important for women's sport as a whole. And we've obviously got the Women's Rugby World Cup only just over a month, or I don't know what date are we on today. I think we're about a month away. A
Yeah.
month away. Um, and so that's around the corner. So like, how would we now springboard and utilize that moment as well to kind of help women's sport gain greater visibility as we continue to go forward? Um, yeah, I've totally forgotten what your question was, and
No,
I'm going
I
to a
think you've
complete
really
rant.
answered it. And I love that you brought in women's rugby because I think it's that point of momentum, right?
Yeah.
Because there were some real core memories made all over the country on Sunday night. And it's just that sort of where does that visibility go next is really interesting. And as a marketing leader, what excited you most about, because this is such a dream brief in
Oh,
many
yeah.
ways, like what was it about this opportunity to do things differently that really just kind of excited you?
I mean, I I already thought I was in the dream job, but I have to say, over the last 48 hours, I'm having a pinch me moment of, oh my word, this is the dream job. And I watched BBC News last night, the 10 o'clock news, where Rachel Yankee was talking about, okay, and now it's for the marketeers to really take this on. I was like, okay, thank you for the brief. That is, how lucky am I? How I'm incredibly grateful to be in this position, and I'm damn sure that I want to make sure that myself and my team that we really use this moment. And I suppose one of the things that well, a couple of things that really excite me about women's sport and the potential that women's sport and by that women's football has. I think, I've talked before about women's sport lies at this intersection of sport, culture, and entertainment. And if you think about we think about new waves, right? New waves in art, new waves in music. They are those opportunities for things to be done differently, for things that are considered. And I mean, different from what is considered as the norm. So, I'm going to take people back to, like, let's say, David Bowie and the new wave music movement. And we can look back at that moment in time and think, oh, God, how things shifted. And that's the opportunity we have now in sport and in particular in football. So when I'm talking about doing things differently, I'm like, we've got this whole new audience that's coming to football for the first time. We've got this huge opportunity to capitalize on this new wave and think about how, as a brand, we start to behave differently, that we bring our core fans with us. We don't want to alienate any of our fans. We want to make sure that we're, as I said before, kind of just supercharging what already makes this unique and brilliant and what they love about the women's game. And we've got this opportunity now to package this differently and really fuel this new wave to reach this new audience. I mean, I can't think of a more exciting job personally right now.
It's so exciting. And I love that sort of visualization of a new wave and a new, because there is such a commercial opportunity within that as well, because all marketeers are obsessed with, the next TikTok trend. But this feels like a more fundamental shift in sports entertainment that just means that brands can really get on that stage as well. And
Absolutely.
I'd love to shift the discussion slightly because we were lucky enough to work with you on the pitch process at Creative Brief. And I'd love to sort of get into the nuts and bolts because it's so easy. Particularly, I'm sure lots of people watching this will probably have about 100 tabs open in their brain of all the things that they want to do and everything they've got on their to-do list and the hundreds of Teams meetings they have. And it's so difficult to actually take the idea of doing things differently and actually marry that with the action of doing things differently. And you really did do things differently with this pitch process. You chose to run a progressive pitch, which focused on strategy rather than creative output. And I'd love to get your view on the positives of doing this and why you felt this was a good approach for the WSL, and also what gave you the confidence not to ask for creative work.
Um, there's a few reasons why. I have been on the other side,
Yeah,
been in agency life, and I understand how much it takes out of the agency to be part of a pitch process, that it is how you win work. So you have to do it. It's a and you want to show your best self. But the agency landscape is super hard. I think it's harder right now than it ever has been. Agencies are working with really lean teams. And I think I wanted to make sure that we were being fair. The second thing, I feel is that um, we're also a really small team.
yeah,
And I felt like actually designing a process that allowed us to get to know the people better and how we would work together was so much more important than seeing the creative work, because we've all been there where you do the pitch process and then you rebrief anyway. So
yeah.
what a total waste of time. Um, and because you get things that you're happy with as you do. If you do a creative process, you'll get creative back and you're like, yeah, that's the strongest creative, but because you're not under the hood of the business. So you end up rebriefing, and I just did not want to waste anybody's time to do that. So I think it um I think the onus was on us to make sure we were leaning into the process. We were doing the hard graft too, that we set clear criteria, we knew what we were looking for, and we wrote a really good brief. And so that we then got what we wanted out of the process without literally flogging all the agencies that were part of it to death.
I love that because you're talking about like a real starting from a point of real mutual respect and respect for each other's time and energy and that really is so key to kind of creating positive momentum. And did that momentum through the pitch allow you to make braver decisions? And what were your views on the positives of running a pitch this way?
Um, I think, yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the pitch process. I know, Kat, my colleague that was did it with me, at the end of it, we were like, we've got an amazing agency, but oh, really, really enjoyed it. I think because it allows when you're on the brand side, you're also learning quite a lot out of the pitch process as well. But I think, I think in terms of like being brave decisions. This was the first pitch process where I've been part of, where being inundated with that first level RFP response. We
Mm.
had so many. So we had to be very clear on what our criteria was as we were going through them and making sure we took the time to go through all of them and be objective at that first stage. We had so many.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Understandably so. I mean, it's a dream brief.
Yeah, indeed it is. And then I think it's about, and then you sort of said about being brave. I think it was just I didn't say it was about being brave. I think it was just having a really good sense of feeling,
Mm.
as well as it being the objective. We had the objective criteria, we knew what we were looking for, but so much of our process after that first RFP was about getting to know the people, and as you said, building those relationships and that trust, and being like, how we need to. We're a small team. We really need an agency that's going to be our partner, and how and like making sure we had that right feeling coming of all of those meetings, and balancing that with that objective criteria. So I don't think it was about being brave. I think it was about not knowing what we were looking for.
I
Um,
think that's so interesting as well, because you sort of mentioned how you had a brilliant brief, but it's arguably maybe being having that clarity allows you to be a challenger brand, to have that real clarity of thinking of what it is you need and what it is you stand for.
yeah, yeah.
And you touched on this slightly with the fact, and it's really interesting because I often find this with marketing leaders who've had a stint agency side as well, that have that real genuine understanding of the pressure that agencies are under. And the pitch process can be actually quite a galvanizing, energy creating moment and a learning opportunity if it's handled in the right way. But what do you think the key ingredients are of mutually respectful and creatively successful brand and agency partnerships?
Um, Trust is point one. Openness, like being transparent, sharing when things are working, when they're not working. Um, Bringing that your agency partner in under the hood. I've been in so many situations. I've seen it where they're kept at arm's length, but actually, I want an agency partner that is under the hood with us, that is understanding everything that's going on, and therefore can react to that. And then I think, being a challenger brand, you've got to be willing to take some risks.
Yeah.
Sometimes things don't work out quite the way you want them to. So having that willingness in that to take risks as well, but within that relationship I think is also really important.
I love that you mention those friction moments because I sometimes think that's where relationships break down, is where they kind of try and avoid those friction moments and
Yeah.
expect everything to go brilliantly when actually, if you're being bold and you're being a challenger brand, sometimes there will be those moments of friction.
Mm.
And I know you're fresh back from Switzerland, and this is just such a exciting moment. And how, as a team, because you're a small team, you mentioned that, How are you maintaining momentum? And I love that you're already starting to hype us up for the World Cup. I'm here for that. I like to peak early. But how are you maintaining that momentum in the long game?
Okay, so well, I think we have spent 12 months getting the foundations right. So I think this time last year we were in that pitch process. I think Anomaly started with us in September, and we have been working behind the scenes on making sure we've got the right brand strategy, the right brand positioning. We redid our visual identity and obviously did the naming alongside that. We have been building out playbooks of how our brand should come to life across all of different touch points. We have been working on a new creative platform that's not for 1 year, it's I'd say for a lifetime. It might change, but who knows? I'm going to say it's a lifetime. Our next, what's hard, just do it.
Yeah.
We've been doing all of that for last year, and we're about to come out with it. So as we're getting closer to season launch, and this season, we will have our first season launch campaign through our new brand positioning with our new creative platform, and then our behaviors will start to shift across everything we do. So for example, next season you will be able to watch all of our games some live somewhere for the first time. We're mixing up our social platforms, we're launching new digital platforms. So you're going to start to see this new brand that we've been building over the last year actually now start to come out in the real world. But I think as a team, it's also about, and I say team, I mean my team, I mean all our agency teams, and not just Anomaly, the other agencies we work with as well, um, being really integrated in how we start to bring this to life. So I am a brand planner at heart. So my team love hate relationship with this, but we will now have, it sounds really simple but never been done before with this team. It's like bi-monthly integrated reviews and planning sessions where we bring everyone together. Okay, what's gone out through all of our communications across our platforms? What's worked, what's not worked? How is our voice kind of continuing to build across all our different platforms, and having those when this is also new and relationships are also new, bringing that kind of startup mentality to that kind of continuous improvement, that always for acting like we're always in beta. And my phrase is constantly saying test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. But we are able to do that right now. And we won't always be able to be like that because at some point I'm sure that the women's games can become so massive that we become a huge behemoth of an organisation like the Premier League. We're not right now. So let's not act like that. And let's kind of continue to iterate and to build. And I'm very excited that we're about to come out in the world
That's
with a new way of being.
That's so interesting, like the combination of that like test and learn challenger approach with like a real marketing focus on creating a long-term brand platform. I love that you mentioned just do it. My mind went to because you're worth it, those kind of platforms that really redefined value in a ecosystem and really sit in culture. So interesting. Um, we have so many other things that I could talk about to you because this is obviously such an interesting area and so many opportunities from a commercial perspective as well. Like thinking about the brands that aren't even playing, that have been sitting on the sidelines, that probably have been watching this tournament thinking, okay, we need to really kind of step up to this really interesting moment if we actually do want to play in culture. And with that in mind, my final question to you is, what stereotype of women's football would you like to smash?
And I would say I'm not sure that's my job. I
Okay.
think the players are already doing that.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think the what is happening on the pitch is busting a lot of those stereotypes. I think my job is to tell those stories to make sure everybody knows what they're doing. I don't want to just see a social post once a year that gives the speed of Chloe Kelly's penalty kick and then it's quicker than the men's. I want everyone to know that every day. They are incredible athletes. and how do we continue to celebrate them and what they're doing.
That's such a wonderful point to end on. Thank you so much, Ruth. It's not about a one-off marketing moment. It really is about creating a platform to tell new stories, which will hopefully inspire the next generation of players to do the same. So thank you so much, Ruth, for joining us.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.